Yeah.
What are some of the things that you think your shadow says to you, and maybe what are some of the ways that it's interfered with your day-to-day or just your life in general?
Man, that's a good question. For background, Kobe Bryant's Muse was it's a big documentary for me because he talks about how he separated Kobe Bryant from the Black Mambas, this idea of him just, like tearing it up on the basketball court. Mm-hmm. And he separated it, but he brought all this dark energy because he was kind of going through a hard time with just like what was going on in his personal life. I'm not going to touch base on it, but like he kind of had to put it somewhere. Mm-hmm. So he put it in basketball, and that's why he has all those like crazy games, and like he was just dominating at the time. So I learned that as like he was separating the two. Like he was just here's Kobe Bryant, the family man, and here's the Black Mamba or Kobe Bryant, the basketball player. So for me, what my shadow tells me is like, you didn't work hard enough today. You need to work harder. You always need to work harder. And I might have the best day. Like I might wake up early, get to the office like an hour early, get my day scheduled, have, eat clean, stick to my diet, go home, have a great workout, eat dinner, and then like I'll be up all night like I didn't work hard enough. And that's what my shadow tells me all the time. So I'm not working hard enough. You could be further along. Why aren't you there yet? Like, what's going on? Like, why don't you have a house by 30? Like, your mom bought a house when she was 30. You got to be better than that. You got the nice car. You got this. You got that. Come on. You got to be better. And
it's never enough.
It's never enough. It's never enough. And it drives me nuts. And it also makes my life so much harder because I do it in other aspects. Well, I'll do like, I'm not being a good enough friend, or I'm not being a good enough brother, or am I being a good son? And like, you get this guilt where you're like, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. But like, you got to sit there and take a second and be like, you're doing just fine, man. Just like, give it a second. There are days where you can only give 40%. And if that's all you have, and that's as much as you give, great. But for me, I got like this, ever since I started reading like David Goggins' books and like watching David Goggins, I kind of look at it where
who's going to carry the boats?
Who's going to carry the boats? And it doesn't matter how heavy the boats are. I'm carrying the boats. Like, I think the thing that that my shadow tells me on a day-to-day basis is, let's say I'm walking down the street, I see somebody in like a wheelchair or an army vet that doesn't have an arm. I'm like, you know what? You should probably go to the gym today. You may not feel like it. You're tired and everything, but those people don't have that. You should probably do that. Even if it's the most inconvenient thing for my day. Like, let's say like I have a family party, I got to do grocery shopping, and I might have like 2 hours of free time. Guess what we're filling that 2 hours with? We're working harder. You need to work harder. You need to go to the gym. You need to not take stuff for granted. And like, that's probably what my shadow tells me on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And just, it can make someone loopy at times. Like, let's say, for example, technology. Mm-hmm. Everybody always wants the brand new phone. Don't get me wrong, I want the brand new phone too. But then I also look at it like, what do you mean you want a brand new phone? Your phone works totally fine. Stop complaining about what you got. Mm-hmm. And like the shadow is constantly beating me down, being like, you could be more disciplined. You could be more consistent. So that's probably more where my shadow is telling me on a day-to-day basis. Like, you might have a jam-packed day. You might have taken your cat to the vet, had this whole day where you're waiting, be stressed out, but it doesn't mean that you can't show up for other commitments that you have. You have to get it done that day. Mm-hmm. Even if you feel like it's not, you got to get it done that day.
It's a form of the way my therapist described it as self-contempt.
Yes, you got to be fulfilled.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing.
But you're not. You're never fulfilled.
It's never enough. There's always another mountain to climb. Mm-hmm. When I hit President's Club, I was like, cool. I did this, and this. I was number one in my office. I was ninth in the company. I came into a company, and within 3 years, I hit all my goals. What's next? Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole nother mountain where I'm like, God damn it.
Gotta do this again?
Gotta do this again? And I'm like, man, this is crazy. But then it'd be a different mountain. It'd be like a manager mountain. Can I get to the top of the company? Let's do that. And I'm like, I don't even know where do I start? And then you're right back at the bottom of the mountain, mm-hmm. which I love, but it's also like the shadow is like telling me otherwise. Like, it's a give and a take.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably what my shadow speaks to me on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I want individuality, and being independent is a big thing for me, but I also like playing within the rules and the system Once I learned from politics is that you've got to play within the pocket. Quarterbacks don't make good plays while running. Well, some of them do, but a lot of the great ones,
Very few percent.
very
small percentage.
If you notice Tom Brady, he's definitely always in the pocket, making good plays, making it happen.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Now that we've talked about the shadow a little bit, knowing what you know about it and knowing how hard it is to deal with that voice, because I know how hard it's a monster of a voice, and it's in your mind every single day, and it's this constant anxiety of every single moment, over analyzing what you just said, what you just did. It'll be the most random thing from months ago, and all of a sudden it pops in your head in the next 2 hours. You're just wasted of anxiety of like, why did I do that? Why did I say that?
Yep.
Am I right?
Yeah. I'm thinking
Knowing
about 4 times. We're toward different things right now.
Knowing that it can be that dark and that daunting. There is also a side to it that has allowed you to win in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Would you trade that shadow for any other shadow?
Nah, I wouldn't trade it because it's gotten me to go into that extra gear. Like, I use it for everything. It's like that extra oomph. And, I'm not a big drinker. I don't do drugs in any kind of capacity. So it's just like everything in my mind. That's my reward system, is where I'm like, I look for the next mountain to climb, and that's what I'm addicted to, and that's what the shadow has fed me over and over and over again. And some of the books I've read have fed the shadow almost to a point where it's like kind of like the boogeyman to me. It's like it's a real thing. So there are that gear, and it's kind of weird because sometimes I'll see somebody else's shadow in a sense. I'm like, damn, like that person's just like there's this one guy at my last place where he just was a machine, dude. He like just couldn't talk to anybody about anything. You call him and be like, yeah, dude, I'm just looking forward to, grilling out every day. And he would just grind. And I'd be like, dude, like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just making a lot of calls. I'm like, dude, you have like no personality. How are you like just turning it on the phone call? And he's like, I don't know, dude. I gotta, put food on the table or something like it. And I think his anxieties were his shadow.
Like a fear of not having or something.
Yeah, something like that. And I'm like, I wonder if people see my shadows when I have like those days where I'm like, I gotta, we gotta make this happen. Like Monday morning, it's like, I got nothing on the docket. Let's see what we can do and just turn it on. So maybe they see it, but I would never trade my shadow for anything else.
The shadow can be a lot of things too. Like it's not like that. And there's probably multiple layers. I honestly don't. Again, this is all really new to me, but I'm like loving it right now as of like the past like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
So Jordan Peterson talked about an example of where him and his, I think he was living in a condo with his family, and it was like one of those situations where like the homes are like side by side, so there's like you can hear what's going on.
Share the wall.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a late night, I guess, and he had opened up the cabinet to make his wife tea. And then he closed it, and somebody started knocking and banging on the wall. Now, mind you, this was a neighbor that they had made a lot of accommodations for in the past because they were always complaining about things. And they always made those adjustments because they felt like they were agreeable people. They were good people, and they were just like, yeah, they're just good people asking for things, and we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
But this night, he was not having it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I laid in my bed, and I started to have intrusive thoughts about if they knock one more time, like I'm going to burn this entire place down.
Yeah.
And so he was like, it was a legit thought.
Yeah.
It was a legit intrusive thought of like, I'm going to go do this if they knock one more time. And this is a good lesson about when you have intrusive thoughts. And he was like, I can either lay down and allow them to knock again and give me that opportunity to mentally go there, or I can get up and do something right now or this is going to get really bad. So he went and knocked on their door, addressed the whole situation, whatever. It ended up being fine. But that was another form of him talking about what his shadow was and whatnot, right? So I want to circle back, though, and kind of stay on this topic a little bit. So one of the reasons that I asked you, like, would you trade it, is because I had this feeling, and I haven't done any research on this, but I think that there is some level of correlation between how much trauma and trouble people have experienced in their life journey, especially obviously their early development, and high performers and high achievement. Right? Like there has to be something to that.
Yeah.
And I sometimes with the things that I've experienced and the things that have been really difficult for me, I have this big fear of fixing it, because then I think the drive to want to achieve things and the drive to want to do well is going to go away, because in a lot of ways those traumatic experiences are what gave me the drive to prove myself, to do well, to show that I can add value and all those things, right? So as you reflect and what you're willing to share, right? What are some of the things that you think, as far as like just your upbringing and your journey, what are some of the things that you think have added to some of that trauma and contributed to that shadow to give you that fuel to want to be better, to want to do more?
I think I agree with you. I think high performers do have some sort of like internal dialogue or internal memory where something just went wrong that day, or bad timing, whatever the case may be. It could be different for every human being. But I do believe there's a direct correlation, because you got to have something. You just can't be happy-go-lucky all the time and perform at a high level. Maybe you do. I've never met somebody that's high-performing and had a great upbringing and everything's great. There's something that they're not saying or doing, that they're not talking about, that's probably driving them. So what my traumas that probably have helped me is like growing up without a dad. That's kind of where I'm like, I want to make my mom proud. You know, she was hardworking enough to raise 2 boys on her own and make more than, you know, a couple, like a family of who has a mom and a dad. So I look at it like as a new lens of growing up and being an adult. I'm like, I need to not let like all that hard work go away. So I need to be the best. My mom was the best up until, you know, well, currently she's the best out of the bloodline, I guess you would call it, or like my family trait. And my grandpa made sacrifices for her to have that. She made sacrifices for me to have that.
Gotta carry the torch, Jack.
I carried the torch. So I look at the things that my mom has done. She's a very successful woman that, you know, raised 2 boys on her own, was in sales, middleman sales, just as much as I have been in. And so I look at that. That's some of my trauma where I'm like, you know, you got to make mom proud. You got to make your family proud. You got to be the best person that has come out of your family currently. And then your kids, hopefully you set your kids up to make them better than you were. Because that's kind of the American dream at the end of the day, where your parents set you up to do better, you set them up, and that's how you know that your parents and what they've done is working. Like they raised you right. You did better than they did. So that's some of my trauma. To get a little bit darker about my trauma, I think the not having a relationship with my brother and my mom kind of always being busy with work, growing up alone, like I just kind of, not growing up alone per se, but like being very self-isolating as a child, that kind of got me to be more driven. Like I think of the little Jeff that's like, would 3-year-old Jeff or 5th grade Jeff or high school Jeff be proud of Jeff right in front of you right now? And some days I say yes, and some days I say no. But, you know, the drive to always make my past self be like, that's a cool guy, or I'm so excited to be that person one day, is also something to think about.
What would you say, rather than thinking, would that person be proud, that 5th grade Jeff or 10th grade Jeff, whatever it is, what would you say to them?
What would I say to them?
Knowing what they were struggling with, especially in hindsight, right?
Yeah, it's all going to be okay, regardless of how hard it is. It's going to work out. The sun will go up, the sun will go down, and there's always going to be another day. There are going to be bad days, there are going to be good days, but you got to take the good with the bad. It can't always be good. I always wanted it to be good, and then I realized that it's going to be bad. And then I also looked forward to the bad, and I almost expected the bad. And now growing older as an adult, it's like, I've been through the hard times, I've been through the good times. There's just times, you know, just try to stay, you can only control your emotions, how you react, and your actions. So I try to react, or not react in a sense of good or bad, to good or bad things.
Ebbs and flows.
Ebb and flows. Make sure that it's just even keeled, because the peaks and valleys of either sales or life is just really tough to deal with. Dude, when you feel like you're on top of the world, it feels amazing, you know? It feels awesome. And when you're in one of the lowest parts of your life, it feels like nobody understands you. But then you realize that it starts balancing out to where it's not so, you're not so far apart from the person next to you.
Everyone's at the end of the day fighting their own battle.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, though, on the topic of how things can be really bad, things can be really great, things can be just neutral. That's what I love about sales. Sales is so parallel to just what life is like.
Yes.
Like, it's such a roller coaster of a journey in terms of the skill set and just the results and what you learn from it. And it's just I'm a strong, when I was younger, I used to say, I think that everybody should work in restaurants.
Yes.
And in service and hospitality in some way, shape, or form, and retail maybe a little bit as well. Like, I'm still a big believer of that, but I think definitely now, I believe if you want to go anywhere in business, whether it's marketing, whether it's operations, product development, anything, you should have to do a little bit of sales.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, the world would just be such a better place. You just learn so much about that journey. And unfortunately, it does take some time too, right? Like, in terms of sales, in terms of actually selling, because I did administrative work for sales before, I'm actually only 3.5 years into the journey. And I feel like just now, and there were definitely great moments during those 3.5 years, but I feel like right now I'm starting to have this compound effect where I'm really seeing how the game goes even more. And I'm really able to manage my mental throughout that journey at another level that was harder before. It's always been good, but also no, it hasn't always been good.
No, it hasn't always been good. It's never always as good.
It's never always good.
Yeah, you always feel like there's like a monkey on your back, because since you're experienced now in sales, you remember when it was really good and you didn't think it would ever end. And then you also remember when it was really bad and you didn't think that would ever end. But then you realize, oh, okay, after you've been through a couple cycles, it's like, I just know when if things are good, you're pleasantly surprised. If things are bad, you expected it. It's kind of like a different mindset. And I do agree with you also. I think everyone should work in restaurant industry and retail jobs to kind of know what it's like to be at the ground level of anything. When I got into sales and logistics, they have a mantra where literally everyone starts at training and shadowing, and you don't even get to start making sales calls until 3 months in.
Wow.
So you kind of everyone kind of starts at the same level. And when you see somebody who's like in President's Club or a CEO or a big time manager of a whole division, you're like, oh, he or she was at my level at one point. And then you like there's this guy that worked at my company. He started in 2006. I don't know about you, but George W. Bush was president then. And that's all I need to tell people when he would give him advice. When this guy would give other people advice, I'm like, listen, dude, you should take that with treat it like the Holy Grail, because he's been here since George W. Bush has been president. And I just walk away and people are just dumbfounded, like, whoa, dude, he's been
Probably knows a few things.
Probably knows how to map out, certain aspects of a sales cycle, 1 or 2 times.
But you mentioned something. So you said that the organization you were with, sales reps couldn't dial for 3 months. Just goes to show how different organizations can be a different entire experience.
Yes.
The organization that I'm with, we couldn't afford, we're smaller, right? We can't afford to have you 3 months not dialing. You got to go pay for yourself.
You got to pay for that seat.
You got to pay for that seat. So you got to get on the phone within the next 14 days and you better start closing. From different organizations, it can be a completely different perspective. But overall, what would you say the sales environment needs in terms of resources for sales reps?
Sales reps definitely feel like they can sell better when they're empowered. So if you spoke about how being independent and having your freedom helps you better, well, I would want to know with my sales reps or with a company, if I started, what do you need from me? That was always the thing for my managing roles. What do you need from me? What can I do to help you? So I would want them to tell me one thing they need, personally. So if I had, Dave and GC in a room, Dave's going to tell me one thing he needs from me that might be different from GC. I want that one thing where it's like, hey man, I just need like a cigarette break every 45 minutes. All right, we can grant that. That's sure. I can figure that out in the budget. I'll make it logistically work in my brain, and that's fine. If that's what you need to sell, we'll take it. So like one intangible, like one thing where it's like, okay, no debate. I'll give it to you right out of the gate. You can't be like, yo, dude, I need to have like a 3-hour lunch. No, it's not happening. Yeah. But like I need, give me something that I can, work with. Play the game. Then the other two things would be like, it's like technology, big thing. So it'd be like, whatever I can get them to just focus on sales. So I worked for sales companies where some of them use HubSpot and others use their own CRM. Mm-hmm. And HubSpot for me was really great because you would just automate it. Okay, I made one phone call, I reached so-and-so, I made a note, and then it would make a task for 2 to 3 days now. Whatever to automate it, where they're just focusing on dialing and what's going on in that phone call and maybe a generic email. Whatever I can make their lives easier with the mundane tasks like technology, I would invest it. I'd be like, we got to get that done. Because if they can just focus on being present on a phone call and they could take like 45 minutes for a phone call or have the best technology, it's going to make those tasks that they're like, oh, this is so many policies. Like, you got to like send me a recap or you got to send me an email that entails what are next steps after you had this big meeting, like whatever to make those tasks easier to where I can track their progress or manage easier for them. That's what we got to invest in. You got to be able to delegate easier and you got to be able to do everyday tasks. Simple. I don't know how to explain that.
No, it's impossible to multitask.
Yes.
I don't care who says that they are great at multitasking.
It's a lie.
No, you're not. You're task switching.
Yes.
Multitasking is just not a thing.
No.
Like no one's efficiently multitasking. And so I always think it's funny that's like, I think I've probably even said that in interviews before, like I'm a great multitasker. It's just not true. No one can multitask. And so for salespeople, like you've got to be able to just focus on talking to people.
Yes.
And finding opportunities.
Yes.
And I think the organizations that are able to remove the administrative side of things and remove as much as possible of it, because you're never going to remove all of it.
Yes.
But as much as you can automate for them, to your point, I think that'll find them a lot of success.
Like if they don't have to worry about invoicing, they don't have to worry about anything. Like there's a department or there's a program or there's something else for them to just focus on sales, I'm there. Like, yeah, you want them to be the point guard of the deal and the account. If something goes wrong, you want them to be able to relationship build that. That's totally fine. But I'm talking about like other things that's not related to sales. You want to invest in that time and place. So I would say invest in other resources and the technology. And then I also would invest in the culture. Companies and people like working for companies where they're happy. Now, sales is very up and down, as we've said this whole time. But if we can make their life better, not by just a paycheck and health benefits, but we can make their life better while they're working or working for a company, that's great. So I'm not talking t-shirts for them. I'm not talking happy hours. I'm talking like general like culture aspect of it. Like I want them to feel more comfortable. Like they got to talk to me about like a money advice. Like, yo, dude, I got like a credit card bill, but I'm doing life insurance. Like I want them to be able to come to me for other aspects of it. Like if I'm a manager or running the company. So I'd say that'd be something like be a little bit better. But culture is very vague, but I would want them to just be happy working for the company. And I'm not thinking of normal pizza parties or t-shirts that say the company on there, because I feel like that's propaganda in a sense. Some people might not agree with that, but I think that's propaganda. I think that's like kind of like the government saying like, oh, we're going to give you everything that you wanted. We're going to pay for this and pay for that. And they get into office and they don't do any of those things. It's propaganda. Oh, we're going to give you that raise in 6 months, but here's a pizza party for you to forget about it. It's propaganda.
Yeah.
So I want like full like culture aspect, like where you feel like you're part of something greater or you feel like you're growing, because that purpose and that culture is going to make that person individually feel better, and it's going to make them produce better.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And I think I'm a big believer too that a lot of that falls on not just ownership but leadership, and then leaders that don't have the title either.
Yeah.
So like if you're someone who wants these things, create them. Right? Like if you're somebody who wants the team to feel like they can go to their manager or go to someone and talk about how they're struggling with credit card debt.
Yes.
Start the conversation at the lunch table. Start the conversation with the person that's next to you on the floor. Like talk to them about how like, hey, these are some of the things that I'm doing. Like what are some of the things that you do to manage your money?
Yeah.
Right. Like have those conversations and create an environment. Because I'm a big believer of that. It's like, it definitely starts from the top, but there's also this element of like leaders within the business and leaders without titles within the business, entrepreneurs.
Yep.
I think that is where you start to build that culture, is having that mindset of, I don't care what my title is, I can help contribute to this culture and I can make this culture better. Because when everybody's thinking that way, that's how you get that culture, and you don't need pizza parties to do that.
Yeah, and to your point, kind of circling back to something else we talked about mentors and mentees and different dynamics of an organization. They also become your friend, even if you leave that organization, and help you with other things. So when I managed a TQL, I had 14 reps, and I was helping them do the same thing I was doing while having my own book of business and making sure loads picked up by time and delivered on time while selling and managing them while they were doing the same thing. I created a culture, or tried to create a culture, where I'm like, hey man, when you start making that big money from commission, come talk to me. Let's talk about money. I don't want you making the same mistakes I did, because when anybody starts making a lot of money, they start making really dumb mistakes. Like I made a lot of dumb mistakes. I'll be quite frankly, like I got plenty of tattoos that I'm like, I probably shouldn't. She had never done that, but I also love them. But, you know, it's just one of those things I've spent money on, some of my vices. But
you could have waited on me.
Yes.
Like you didn't have to do them all at once.
Yeah, no, I didn't have to do a full leg sleeve within 7 months. But
by the way, they're 6.
But by the way, they're great. Thank you so much. You know, I'm so happy to have them. But I would try to like integrate that, because like that guy from Baltimore who was Italian, he told me about money and kind of like what you should do with it. Now, were his spending habits great? Probably not, but he still was kind of like, hey man, you should do this, you should try this, you should try that. He was over here trying to tell me I should get an American Express card because you can get all these bonuses and everything like that. And I'm like, I don't really need that. I kind of have like an Apple card, and I don't want to take on too much debt, because I was really afraid of debt. And before I started making big money in sales, it might be a newsflash for most people, but takes a while to make money in sales.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of debt that I just paid off and everything. And I always wanted somebody else to kind of tap me on the shoulder when I became something and be like, hey man, you need some help with that? Like, you need like help with money? Do you need like help with this? Like, let me show you something. Let me show you what I do. It might not work for you, but this is what I did. And that might spark something in them. That might spark them to realize I should save some money, or I should do a 401k, or Jeff's looking out for me and I should probably not buy that new car or something like that. Like just that.
Even just how they manage it on a regular basis. Like I said this to our team, like our leadership team, which is like, I really want to show the team how to manage their money outside of the 401k, outside of the investing. I want to show them how to manage it right now, because I think another thing that happens is people weren't taught. And that includes myself. I had to learn the hard way, but and that's the case for a lot of people, is you weren't taught how to manage money. And so you make these mistakes. And then all of a sudden, when you don't have money, you turn around and you point the finger at somebody to say, you're my company is the reason, my manager is the reason, the clients are the reason.
The percentage I make is the reason.
I have a bad book of business, right? But if you're able to teach people the fundamentals of how to manage their money, then maybe they don't run into that. And that goes back to culture. Like that should be a part of culture, is teaching people how to manage their money so that they never point the finger at you as to why they don't have enough, or they're not making enough.
Yeah. And I feel like if you, like to your point, nobody teaches anybody about money. It's kind of like you learn from your parents, but are your parents like, or your brother or your family or your friends, like, are those all people that like you want to learn from? You may or may not want to learn that. I learned money, like the intro to how to budget money, from my mom. And it was an old envelope system where I'd come home and I had to pay for acting school by myself. She wasn't going to pay for it. Now, was it more expensive than community college? No, but it was still expensive nonetheless. So I come home, I divvy up all my tips and everything into little envelopes, and I still had bills to pay. I had a car payment. I had credit cards to pay for. Like, I was a pretty dumb kid at the time, so I was learning how to manage money. But I learned early on how to budget. And then there's the other aspect of money. How do I make my money not just sit in a bank account and build, and how do I make my money go from sitting in a bank account, not making interest, to making it work while I sleep kind of aspect.
Exactly.
And nobody taught me that until I started making a lot of money. I had to learn that stuff on my own. So to your point, I think sale reps are so easy. Like, some of them can make a lot of money for themselves and for the company, but they have a really hard time keeping that money they make for themselves. They're really bad with money, but it's ironic. They're really bad with money, but they know how to make somebody else. It's kind of weird. It's really weird.
It's a weird dynamic for sure.
Yeah.
I just realized we're gonna have to do a part 2 in 6 months, and because there's still so much more I want us to talk about. I'm gonna go a little bit off topic here, but
No worries.
What's your relationship right now with your wardrobe?
Oh,
The reason why I ask is because, like, I'm in this weird spot right now where I've always been about, like, the comfy fit, like pretty much like what I'm wearing right now. But I'm also I think that guys dressing up in, like, nice slacks, like nice button-up shirt, collar, throwing on a blazer, things like that. Like, I really feel like that's a lost art, and it's just a lost value.
Yeah.
So I find that on evenings and weekends, I'm just like comfy me.
Yep.
But also during the week, I love going to the office me and dressing up and presenting myself at that level. So, like, it's putting me in a weird spot right now with my wardrobe.
Yeah. You kind of like feel like you wear the same thing every day on the weekends, but when you're in the office, you're like, I'm going to, spice it up a little bit. But it's like, it's for you kind of aspect.
Yes, exactly. And also, like, I'm also big on getting the same things over and over. So, like, I'll get the same exact things in different colors, and it's just, like, perfect. Like, that's what I love. I'm doing that over and over again. But sounds like you're kind of in a similar boat. But where are you at with it?
So I have a lot of these Dickies work shirts. They were a deal. They were like $20 one day, so I bought like 4 of them.
Similar to like a Carhartt vibe.
Yeah. And I've never gotten a Carhartt, but I always like Dickies from skateboarding because I used to see those pants all the time. So I got those too. The weekends, I definitely am more comfy, cozy, kind of like yourself. But I like Doc Martens. I like boots. I like wearing like hoodies. Yes. Those are really cool. I still love me. I have like 10 pairs of Vans. I just can't get them out of my wardrobe, dude. I just love skate shoes, and I think I'm always gonna love skate shoes because they're like Converse to me. They never go out of style. Yeah. You get them in every color. Good.
Got something for every fit.
Yes. To your point about buying something in every color and just like perfect.
Yeah.
Goodfellow polos from Target. I get all of those.
Really?
All of them. Dude, I love them. Dude, I don't care.
do like Goodfellow, like the tank tops, the white tees, and the like boxers that they do.
Yeah,
I like
those good.
And those are amazing.
Yes.
But I didn't know that
the polos.
They have polos. Interesting.
Yeah. I think it was like before the pandemic, it was like $9. Now it's probably like 13 or 14. But like,
that's a steal.
That's a steal for
one in every color.
Yeah, every color, dude.
They got great neutral colors.
Great neutral. I got them maroon, navy blue. I got this long sleeve purple. I got this long sleeve like black and gray one. I got every color I could think of. It just works, and it's so easy when you're going to the office. You throw on a nice pair of jeans, a nice polo. You look professional. You look good. So that's kind of something I've gone for. But when I'm like, let's say I'm like going out with like some of the boys, or I'm going out like doing whatever, I might wear a pair of overalls. I'm not gonna lie. I got these pair of overalls from H&M, and I bought 2 pairs, black and blue, and I like them. I guess worker gear is in too. So I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. I saw Pete Davidson wearing overalls one day, and I'm like,
see that actually.
That's where I bought them. I was like, fuck it, dude.
Not a bad guy to follow, by the way.
Yeah, he's doing it right. He's obviously doing something right, I guess. So I look at people, I'm like, let's try that. Let's do that. So I do that kind of thing. I keep it simple. If it comes in black, I'll buy it, obviously. But worker gear and comfy on the weekends, and then in the office, it's normally like a polo or like a button-up shirt. Big fan of that. I'm in the mindset of if you're going to the office, you should dress like you're going into the office.
Right.
You should present yourself, because if you look good, you feel good.
And you play good. Deion Sanders, baby.
Yes, sir.
All right, lastly here for me, and then I mean, if you've got anything you want to touch on that we didn't dive into, I'd be happy to, but we're definitely going to have to do a part 2, and we may or may not have another situation to be able to do that second one on. I'll let you share that if you'd like.
Yeah.
But last thing I want to talk to you about, dating as a millennial.
Oh.
What are some of the things that you look for, and maybe what are some of the things that are missing? What are some of the positives? Are you may not even be dating, but I guess just your perspective on the scene in general.
So my personal relationship with dating in the millennial space is really tough. I think the dynamics of men and women have kind of changed. You know, there's no fault to women being independent. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that men have kind of lost their way in that aspect because they don't know whether to be dominant or to be passive when it comes to that, or even other dynamics of partners and, you know, non-binary people and everything. I respect everybody's walk of life, but I can only speak on men and women at the end of the day. So I think that's tough as a man to kind of figure out, like, okay, like, do I pay for the date? Do I not? So for me, I kind of stick with my gut. I'm old school. I'm going to pay for the date. Whoever asked for dinner on the date, I'm going to pay for it. I always try to pay for the date. If they reach for it, I'm going to offer. But if they want to pay for it, I'm not going to be against it like a blue moon. But I'm talking about like every 8 dates, they're paying for one, maybe. Maybe. I pay for majority of it when it comes to that thing. Mapping dating in millennials generation is tough when it comes to the dating apps. It's like a catalog, is what my tattoo artist said once upon a time. She's like, dude, I feel like I'm just swiping and I'm never going to buy, but I like looking. I love looking at all these outfits and, you know, all these people and be like, oh, yeah, that looks like fun, blah, 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 but never buying. So I'm like, okay, I kind of get that when it comes to that. That's tough to date. I think also our generation kind of lost the whole, oh, I have a brother. He does A, B, and C. You should meet him. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's such a good point.
You know, like there's no more like, oh, how'd you meet Daryl? Oh, I met
Like
Daryl.
setting each other up.
Yes. So it's like, for example, like, you know, my cousin, I think he met his girl through a few friends and be like, hey, I thought that so-and-so would be a really great match for you. I think that's how they met. I might completely be confusing him with somebody else, but that aspect of like a referral, I guess you could call it, going back to sales. I think that's really lost, and that bothers me because when I hear about like how my mom and my dad met, my dad kind of just like did a pickup line to my mom when he was like selling something at the office that she was working at, and they just spiraled from there. People don't meet like that anymore. People meet on like a dating app or at work. Don't get me wrong, sure. You can date at work. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's also kind of like, dude, you're there to do one thing. It's to make yourself money and have a way of life. Like, I don't think that's really where you should be finding who you should be dating. I mean, I've broken that rule and I've also not broken that rule. Yeah. So it all really depends. So I think there's a lot of different factors because, you know, you have this internet sensations where masculinity is like trying to take its control back. And you also have this internet nation where women have this new generation of independence. They've had independence when it comes to, you know, the 90s and the 80s, but my mom remembers when women couldn't even get a credit card. Women couldn't get a house unless the man signed for it. So now they have this new dynamic where they're making more money than men. They're actually being the ones that are having kids and raising the kids and providing for food on the table.
Right.
So, you know, there's all these new dynamics, so I think it's very hard to map it out and work on it and figure out what works.
It's a weird spot right now.
Yes, and I think you need to find somebody that's more in common with you when it comes to what is the dynamic for a relationship that you want. So that's really the big thing. Like, you could have a relationship where you guys split the bill 50-50, and if that works for you, great. Or you can have a relationship where you're a stay-at-home dad and she's, you know, the breadwinner. That's great too. Or it can be the other way around where she stays at home and you go to work, or you both work. It doesn't matter. I just think it's really hard to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. Because, you know, I've been in relationships where we split it. And I've been in relationships where it's not split. And I think, you know, there's an internet sensation where men are like, I'm the prize now because, you know, I make, you know, 6 figures, above 6 foot, blah, blah, blah. It's like, listen, man, you can think that you're the prize all you want doing those things, which is great. Have that confidence, but that doesn't mean you get to devalue women at the end of the day. And then for women, just because he doesn't pay for everything or just because he doesn't have the fancy car or the big house doesn't mean that he's a nobody.
Right.
You got to really appreciate the person for who they are.
Yeah.
So those are all very hard dynamics to figure out.
To that point too, like I think we've on the element of losing things, I think we've lost the journey.
Yeah.
Too. Like to your point, a lot of those guys got there to that point in many cases with a woman by their side. Right? Like there was a woman supporting them, fighting for them along their journey, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Right? Like the both of them supporting each other, because I'm a big believer in that. But we've lost the element of that journey of like wanting to be a part of that journey, and people only paying attention to where that person has arrived and being like, that's where I want to be. Like, no, you've got to be willing to be there at the beginning and also at the end. It doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
But if you want that, I think you've got to be willing to build that too.
Yeah. And I feel like the internet kind of killed that in a sense where it's like, you know, like you wouldn't compare, like, would my grandpa stay with my grandma if he knew in his fingertips he has the whole world at his fingertips and his phone, and see all these different types of girls or all the different types of cars? Would he appreciate it the same that he didn't? And I don't think he would. I think he'd be in the same spot I am, where it's tough to not look at, you know, the side or the right side of you. Not saying what I have isn't great. I love what I have and I appreciate what I have. But it makes it hard to appreciate it sometimes.
Yeah.
Some moments. So I will say that.
Unconsciously too.
Yeah.
It's
not even like consciously.
Like I took, and I know you did the same for a while, but I took 2 years off of Instagram, and it was like, it was freeing to not look around at what other people had going on.
Yeah.
And it's freeing to only be paying attention to what's going on in your life.
Yes.
And whether you realize it or not, when you spend so much time on social media, you are looking into the left and to the right, to your point.
Yes.
And so I think you've got to just be able to kind of manage that and not fall into the trap of constantly comparing, constantly looking at what else is out there and things like that, because you've got to, again, I go back to, you've got to be willing to build it too. If you want it, you've got to be willing to build it.
Yeah. And I think also it's like, but also to that point, what I will say is that it's great to get off social media, but then it's also kind of good to get a different perspective when it's healthy. And it's really tough to get the healthy doses, so it's really hard to like map through all the clutter on the internet. But I will say this, that when people who are in a bad situation, whether it be a bad job, bad relationship, or just not where they want to be, sometimes it can be inspiring to see something else on the internet where it's like, hey, that person did that, I'm going to do that. So I think there's that dynamic. You got to take the good with the bad at the end of the day. And I try to map that out. And it's a weird time. It's a real weird time in America and in the world.
The world, for sure.
Yeah.
It's weird, man. We won't know for a while. I mean, I think you stand for what you believe in, and you live by what you believe in, going back to the points of like whether who picks up the check, who does, like stick to what you believe in. If that works for you, let it work for you. Don't listen to the rest of the world. At the same time, be willing to take advice, and if things are not working for you that way, whatever it is, be willing to learn, be willing to be that mentee, be open-minded. But at the end of the day, only time will tell. We'll see how all these kind of things play out. But this has been awesome, man. What's next for you? Anything that you want to touch on in terms of what's coming up for you? Or
for me, what's next is that I'm being off social media for 2 years, it's been kind of like weird to get back on it. I've been on it for a year now and kind of like seeing like what has changed and everything. I've seen a lot of different changes across, like, it's so weird now where it kind of feels like everyone kind of has an agenda, and I don't feel like that's always like great. So what I've been trying to do is trying to figure out where my creative process is, since I don't really have acting or modeling anymore. So I think my creative process has kind of been to do stand-up. So that's kind of where I want to go. I don't know where it's going to take me. It might take me off the beaten path somewhere else, but that's my next thing. I think I can easily do it because I look at other people. I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. Why not? I am, just like yourself, making a podcast and trying to do that whole thing. And me and you have had conversations about it from time to time. But I'm still kind of keeping it on the wraps when it comes to the next steps of the podcast. But it will be coming very soon. And I'll be very happy to have you on it.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump on. We'll be able to dive into more of the comedic side.
Yes.
There was a certain tone today, obviously, with some of the questions I had, some of the things that we talked about, but I'm excited for it to be more of the Jeff Remishek show and get a tone and feel for more of the, the direction you want to take.
Yeah, the GC show is definitely, I like these conversations because people don't talk shop enough about we can sit around all day. You can go to your work tomorrow and talk about, outbound reach metrics with somebody. And we all know the whole corporate jargon, but talking about it with two different industries or kind of comparing and contrasting, a lot of people don't do this much anymore. They might post a photo on LinkedIn and talk about it on this or that, but not in the way that we've had conversations before. We get it. There's a hustle grind, but there's also that underlining tone of certain how do I say this? Some of the topics that we talked about, there's more of a psyche to it. And people don't talk about the psyche. They just talk about the results or the action, which is a big thing for me, where I feel like the psyche definitely is still just as important as the action and what the result is. So, yeah, I appreciated having these conversations, man.
Yeah, it's been great, man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man.